Baseball is back, and there really is nothing like a home team advantage. That's why Team Toyota makes an obvious choice for your next vehicle purchase or service. With their MVP pricing guarantee, teammates reward program, and streamlined customer experience, their award-winning sales and service departments are there for all of your vehicle needs. A home team advantage is nothing without family and community. Their employees are part of the family, they're part of your town, and we're all part of the team. Visit teamtoyota.net and choose one of their 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton.
Believe that we've officially gotten to hitting season. This is the Phillies Talk Podcast. I'm Corey Seibman. He's Ricky Vitalico. We're joined by Spencer McKercher as well. And it's a hot one out there. We're sitting down to record this on a Tuesday. The Phillies continue their series against the Padres. Ricky, it looks like it's going to be 95 degrees or so all week. And the Phillies look like they were thrilled to be home on Monday night. Finally got back after that London, Boston, Baltimore trip. And they exploded offensively. Big night from Schwarber. Big night from Alec Boehm. Big night at the bottom of the lineup from Rafael Marchán. Let's just start off with what stuck out to you most in that series opener against San Diego.
1 through 4 in the lineup. 9 hits, 1 through 4 in the lineup. And we kind of been waiting for that, the top of the order to kind of explode altogether. Trea Turner fit himself right back in there with a couple of hits. I thought he looked fine. He's one guy that you know what? No rehab assignment. Is he going to look okay? Is his timing going to be down? I thought he looked pretty good, which was a little surprising to me. Excuse me. Kyle Schwarber in the home runs. That's no surprise. It is June. He teed off a couple times in last night's game. He looks like he's seeing the ball really well. I believe one of the pitches was a changeup. The other one was a breaking ball, either a sweeper or a curveball that didn't have much movement. And Bryce Harper just keeps doing what he does. The one guy that has bounced back, Alec Boehm. I mean, this is a guy that was hitting in the 340s. He went in that big slump, about a 3-week slump. Now all of a sudden seems to be hitting the ball where it's pitched again. And that, I think that's his whole key. When he starts slumping, just take what they give you. I think he wants so much to be that guy that puts a lot of power into the baseball because of his size, that he kind of starts overswinging a little bit. And I think that's the case where he was for the last couple of weeks, but he is out of it. He had a great series down in Baltimore and then a big 3-run home run in the opener back in Philadelphia. So good for them. Maybe this washes all that bad off. I mean, maybe this is the big shower that they needed right here.
Yeah, Boehm is up to 60 RBIs on the season. If he stays healthy, he's going to drive in like 115, 120 runs. Yeah. Phillies aren't even midway through the season yet, and he's already up to 60 RBIs. And then Schwarber, I think, quietly leads the National League in walks. He's getting the homers now. I think he has 5 in his last 7 games. He's been hitting for a higher average this year. He's up to 253 on the season. So we're seeing the power of Kyle Schwarber with a couple other really encouraging signs in terms of like the all-around offensive production. But, we talked about getting back home after a trip that it felt like a month. I mean, London, Boston, Baltimore, Schwarber said as much that it felt like they were on the road for a month. Now they're finally back home for this 6-game homestand. They have a road series after that, but then they're back home again leading into the All-Star break. But it would seem to me like this would play in the Phillies' favor in the second half of the season, that they have 2 of their West Coast trips out of the way. They have London out of the way. They really only have one extended trip the rest of the season when they have Seattle, LA, and Arizona. But other than that, it's a lot of, local trips or going to the, face teams in the Central. It would seem that for all the talk of the Phillies playing a soft early season schedule, some of the difficult grind elements are out of the way now.
Yeah, and they're probably pretty, I would say happy about it, but I wouldn't have been happy having to do that London trip when they had to do it. I thought it was bad timing in the year to start with. And it's really basically like having 2 all-star breaks. I mean, when you really think about it, you play 2 games in between 3 off days. That's not regular for major league teams. They get into a regimen. They want to stay in that regimen. And when they get out of it, they get a little grumpy and things can fall apart just like they did. But you know what? This is a veteran team. And that's the belief I have in them, is that they can pull out of this. You got those nasty trips behind you. You said one road trip to the West Coast. That's almost like a regular, okay, we have a regular second half of the season where we got to take a 9-10 game trip out to the West Coast. No big deal. And I just think this team, they're built to get over a little mini slump. They've had a couple little ones here recently. I mean, you had the one just now against the Sox and the Orioles, but they also had that one against the Giants and Rockies. And they got through both of those. So, I mean, I look at it this way. If this team is going to go somewhere, they're going to have their ups and downs. And they've had a couple ups and downs, and they've responded well to both of them so far.
Yeah, starting with that trip out to Denver, when the Denver-San Francisco road series began, the Phillies went 10-10 from the time they went out to Denver through the time they got back from Baltimore. Now, they obviously have much higher aspirations than 500, but given the difficulty of those trips, Colorado, San Francisco, London, then to Boston and Baltimore, two tough teams in their home ballparks, to go 10-10, pretty good. They emerged from it. They're 48-24 after winning Monday as the Braves continue to just fade. They lost another key player over the weekend in Michael Harris II. So the injuries just continue to mount for those Atlanta Braves.
We were probably just a little spoiled. I mean, watching this team, let's face it, before that 10-10, we were spoiled. This team was beating the living daylights out of everybody. And I think you almost get to the point where that's your expectation every single day. And then they lose a couple games and you're like, well, this team, what's wrong with this team? And then you have your naysayers and doubters. And I'm kind of happy I haven't been one of those this year. Usually I'm, but for some reason I see a little bit through this team a little bit more than I have in seasons past. I like their makeup. I really do. I like the way this team goes about their business. And I have a pretty good understanding of, the mindset of how it probably went out in London and these games coming back. People will say, well, look at the Mets. They came back. They went 5-1 off of that trip. Yeah, well, they also went straight back to New York. So it's a big difference.
And, it's funny because I think that the main topic of this pod too for throughout the year is like, all right, the way that they came out hot, it's like, okay, they can afford to go, 7-6 in June like they are right now, right? They had this chance.
But you don't want them to.
No, exactly. You don't. But like like Alec has said all season, and the guys have said all season, it's baseball. That's going to happen. Things like this are going to happen. So hey, it's good to be part of the Fellas Corps. How are you feeling? Are you finally rested up after a week back from London?
Yeah, it was nice. It was, I think that everybody needed that reset. And I think that a lot of these guys quickly settled into being back in their own beds back in Philadelphia. You just mentioned the breathing room the Phillies gave themselves, the fact that they can go 7-6 in June, not really lose any ground. That's the difference between a great team and a good team, a great player and a good player, is that the quote unquote slumps look different. A slump for this team is going 7-6 or losing 2 series in a row, which happens to every other team frequently throughout a season. But the Phillies, to this point, 72 games in, they've won 67% of their games. They've literally gone like 2-1 every 3 games, which is what every team sets out to do. And part of that is, the contributions from all these different sources. And Spence, we saw another one on Monday night, the bottom of the lineup, Rafael Marchán, a 4-for-4 night. It was pretty funny after the game. Rob Thompson said he must have gone to church this morning, kind of implying that a few of those hits were lucky. But hey, you'll take them any way you can get them.
All 4, Corey. All 4.
The check swing to bring in March. I mean, he brings in March with 2 RBIs. March comes in from third on 2 little bloop singles to center field. They look kind of similar. Thought it was cool. The youngest Phillies catcher with 4 hits since Darren Dalton in 1985. He was 23 years old at the time. So pretty cool for Marchán. And, everyone's kind of said he's always had that bat, right? I think he batted .373 in the Venezuelan Winter League, which was the 4th highest this past winter. And then he made that the strike him out, throw him out throw to get the runner for stealing from second. And man, I'm excited to see Marchán. I don't know what this means for Garrett Stubbs. Again, it's one game. We'll see what this rest of the week plays out. And, we could see, I'm sure probably Stubbs back in the lineup either Tuesday or Wednesday here. But Rick, what do you think going forward?
Stubbs is going to still play. I just think it's all about opening eyes. I mean, if you're Rafael Marchán, what is your goal here? Think about this for a second. You're coming up to the big leagues. Do you really want to go down to AAA when Real Muto comes back? The answer is no. Nobody does. So what he's got to do is show that he can handle the pitching. And he's done a pretty nice job so far. I don't know what's going on with Stubbs and the other pitchers. It doesn't seem like they've been 100% on the same page, but that doesn't mean they can't get there. I mean, it's just a matter of making sure that you're studying together, making sure you understand what's going right, what's going wrong on any given night. And and following through with that during the game. Stubbs is fine, once a week. You start putting him in there 2-3 times a week, you don't really know what you have. And this is the Phillies' first real learning experience with this. And I know the Phillies are high on Marchán, and they just probably want to see what he could give them. Maybe not even just for this year, but maybe even into next year.
Celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on OpenTable.
Yeah, you said that the Phillies really haven't experienced this, and that's because JT Realmuto has been such a rock. I mean, the guy plays as much as anybody, and yet despite that has stayed on the field as much as anybody. Prior to this injured list stint for JT, he had spent just 10 days on the IL as a Philly, and that was for a minor hand issue he dealt with. But with the Marchán and Stubbs situation, Stubbs is at the point of his career now so after this season, he'd be entering his second of 3 arbitration years. He earns $850,000 this year, so he's probably looking at something in like the $1 million range next year. If you're the Phillies and you have a JT Realmuto and then you have Rafael Marchán, who's significantly less expensive, relatively, probably cost him like $600,000, so a couple $100,000 less, but he's a younger player, has some upside. Yeah, you start to think about moving on or making that decision. But as far as this season, we've seen that the Phillies value roster flexibility as much as anything. Look at the David Dahl decision, the Johan Rojas decision that we saw to open the week. A lot of that, 50% of that potentially was the fact that if the Phillies wanted to try to pass Dahl or Christian Pache to the minors, they would have had to pass them through waivers, and they were likely to lose one of them. So that's just how teams make decisions. But kind of, thinking about that, did that catch you by surprise, Ricky? The Rojas got sent down? Does this?
It didn't. I guess that was a business call. When you look at what was going on, you had Marsh down in, on his rehab playing center field. That's the antenna's starting to go up there anyways. And Dahl, I don't know if they wanted to lose him just yet. Maybe all-star break, something like that. I don't think they would mind as long as they got him enough at-bats where they could feel comfortable that he's either a positive or a negative for this team. The other one was Christian Pache. How do I
believe
this?
What you said on pregame, though. What did you say on pregame last night? Do you remember?
No, what did I say?
You said almost Pache DFA'd. You'd rather that than Rojas.
I probably would have. It probably would have been my move. Oh yeah,
Why?
my move would have been Christian Pache.
Why is that?
Because I've seen enough. In all reality, I know everything's about what they can be and what he could be, what he adds to the team. Okay, what does he add that's any different than Rojas? I don't see it. I don't see much of a difference. Everybody says, well, he's got a little bit more pop. Well, he's not going to play that much. It's a weird situation to be in. I understand he was a high prospect, and there's always that thought of, what if we let him go? Somebody's going to pick him up, and he's going to take off like a shooting star. Well, then let him take off like a shooting star. He's not going to be the end-all, be-all to this team.
Cord, do you think that?
Well, I was just saying that Rojas and Pache, it's interesting because they're at very similar points in their career. Pache's 25, Rojas is 23. One of the major differences is what Ricky just mentioned, that Pache came up with all this prospect shine, was one of the top prospects in all of baseball, and didn't click. There were thoughts that he was going to be like the next Andrew Jones in Atlanta, and that obviously never happened offensively. But Pache's had 501 career plate appearances. Rojas is at 360. So they've done the same thing, right? So they've done the same thing. One guy you would have lost probably. The other guy you were able to option to the minors. But I think that beyond that, you start to look forward a month from now, trade deadline season, right? I don't necessarily know that the Phillies need to go out and get anybody big, but if they do get anybody, it's going to come at the expense of people who are on the roster. So if they go out and acquire another outfielder, a lot of this conversation we're having about Dahl and Pache, they might not even be on the roster come August 5th.
Right. I think that's the reason why I was saying it, because I don't believe either one of them is going to make it to the end. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I just feel like in Dahl, you have another Jay Cave. Is that fair to say? I mean, that's what I feel like. I might be a little bit off on that one.
I think he's better than Jay Cave.
Yeah. So I was going to say slightly better. Definitely.
Okay, but it's still the same feel to me. Yeah. And Christian Pache, I don't even know what he gives you. I mean, you look at his fielding. Okay, he could field the baseball. Rojas could field the baseball. There's a lot of guys that could field the baseball. But I don't know. It would have just been I don't know. I don't want Rojas to go down and think that he's not good enough to play in the big leagues.
That's what I'm worried about.
That would have been my biggest thing, because I thought he got a little bit, almost too big leaguish at times on his routes and things like that in center field, whereas last year it was just get to the ball, catch the ball. So maybe that could actually help him out in the minors, but I don't know. I just, it was a tough move. It was a move made because they didn't want to lose anybody.
My first thought was obviously I think it was the right move, because if you don't want to lose Pache or Dahl, it's the right move to send him down. But my first thought was, is this going to kill his confidence? He did to a point everything that Rob Thompson and the Phillies wanted him to do to a point in spring training. He batted 230, I guess, just to go down there and get more at bats. And I saw on social over the last 24 hours of just, is there any way that the Phillies maybe look to trade Rojas, or is it more Pache Dahl kind of as trade assets if they want someone big coming up towards deadline?
I think all these guys like Rojas, Marchán, Pache, they're all potentially in play. Not as centerpieces maybe, but as an additional piece. You'd figure that another team, if the Phillies are going for something of medium or bigger size impact, that another team's going to want a prospect or two. But I think that Rojas, Marchán, Pache, they're in play. Not necessarily the Phillies want to trade them, but other teams are going to ask about them. And if the Phillies do go for an outfielder, they would then have a glut of outfielders. In terms of Rojas and what they want him to work on at AAA, this wasn't just about money. It was also about the fact that Rojas had not developed in several key ways that the Phillies wanted to see. Dating back to spring training, the focuses for them with Rojas were plate selection, use the whole field, and be a better bunter. Rojas had a handful of sacrifice bunts last season, but he lucked into them. A lot of them were right back to the mound, and he has enough speed that sometimes he can beat out a ball that's slightly to the mound. But they wanted to see him angle his bunts better, third baseline, first baseline. That's something they were going to want him to practice at AAA. He stopped bunting pretty much at the major league level because he wasn't having success. Now at AAA, if he's batting second or even if he's leading off, it gives him an opportunity to get more of them down, not worry about the impact it's having on a big league game. And his swing also just got too long. I mean, that's something they've been saying to him since he was in the minors. And Rojas was never a big bat guy, similar to Rafael Marchán. Coming up, these are guys who are heralded for their glove. Marchán in 2020 made a surprising impact with some power. And then obviously he's had two good starts in a row here. And then Rojas, I think we would all agree, kind of played over his head last summer when he hit 302 and a 340 on base. You looked at that, you're like, that's a dynamic player. If you can put together that sort of table setting skill with his defense. But I did find it interesting. I asked Rob Thompson this question yesterday, and he said multiple occasions that he still feels that the best version of this Phillies team is with Johan Rojas in center field. They just need him to, be more of an offensive threat than he's been. It had been since May 10th that Rojas had an extra base hit, but clearly they're optimizing for more offense right now. I mean, you look at the center field situation, it looks like it's going to be Marsh and Pache, and then in left field, Whit Merrifield and David Dahl. So, I mean, looks like a lot of mixing and matching. I mean, Ricky, do you think that's going to be a viable solution here for a little while? And do you think that some of this is because JT's out and they need another bat potentially? I think that
probably has a lot to do with JT. I mean, you take JT out of a lineup, I mean, it's a big hole in the lineup. As a matter of fact, I think looking at it now, because you never expect JT to be out for a while, it's the biggest injury that the Phillies could have. I mean, you're talking about a guy who handles all the pitchers, including all the relievers, handles them all very well, understands what he needs to do behind the plate. He's got a great arm behind the plate, quick release time. He's the captain on the field. I'm sorry, that's the one thing that I have really picked up on is that this guy was running the team defensively. And when you look at it in that sense, okay, that can you fill that? The answer is no. And then you look at him in the lineup. You stuck him in a 2-hole, and he's been tearing the cover off the ball for the most part until he started wavering because of the injury. But, I mean, you know, anytime you have to fill a hole that's JT Real Muto, it's going to take 2 guys off the bench. It really is. And that's how you got to look at it, because let's face it, neither Stubbs or Marchand is the answer to JT offensively. So where are you getting your answers? Those bench guys and the guys you put out in the outfield.
Do you think so? Mundo Sosa was taking some left field shag balls.
Wouldn't surprise me.
In left field, is that a possibility, Corey?
Yeah, he started taking fly balls in left field on Monday. I think it's a possibility. Why wouldn't it be? I mean, I look at a guy like that, and he is so smooth in the field. He's not as good at third base as he's at shortstop. We can all agree, right? We've seen him make more mistakes, but he didn't make any mistakes at shortstop for 6 weeks in place of Trea Turner. Like I don't think he had any errors. He was just as good defensively as he was offensively at Mundo Sosa. When you look at him go back on a fly ball, when he's like retreating, when he's going over his shoulder, he has a knack for that. And that's not something that everybody at every infielder has. But when I look at a guy like that, I think he can have success in left field, or if they were to put him in center. He did take fly balls in Clearwater a few years ago. Didn't do that as much this year because, you know, he's been needed at other positions. But there are a couple factors in it. I do think that if you were to play Edmundo Sosa every day for the rest of the season, at some point he's going to get overexposed, right? Like he's not going to hit 300 the rest of the way. He was quietly like trending a little bit down offensively. But the question is, left field facing a left-handed pitcher, Whit Merrifield, Edmundo Sosa, it's a coin flip, right? Offensively, it will be a coin flip. So if Sosa can give you passable defense in left, that becomes an option.
Yeah. He's a guy that I look at, have glove, will travel. I mean, he could play anywhere. I'm dead serious. I think if you put him behind the plate, he could probably catch for you. And I'm not saying that like as a joke. I just think that's the type of player he is. He seems like the type of player that wants to know every position, that wants to become good at whatever he could do so he could get his own bat in the lineup. He's no dummy. He sees what's in there. He sees that Trea Turner's now at shortstop. Where does that – think about it. You go to the bench and you're like, all right, what could I do to get in the lineup? Oh, left field. I'll go take some fly balls. I'll prove to them I can play some outfield. They'll put me out there, and then I'll shine out there also, and then they won't have a choice but to play me.
Yeah, it's turned out to be a pretty good trade. Edmundo Sosa for Jojo Romero a few years ago. The trade deadline kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't even seem like the Phillies were in the market for a utility infielder, but he's been that and even more just in terms of like the versatility and the energy that he brings.
He's got some pop too.
Yeah, that home run in Baltimore. It was great.
Guy's got some pop.
Speaking of Baltimore, real quick, let's.
Yeah, you were there, right? You were there that first night. That must have been an incredible atmosphere, huh?
Corey, I will say, I think that was one of the better regular season games, maybe that I've never ever watched on TV or anything, but just in terms of being there at the ballpark, the atmosphere was unbelievable between both fans. There's a lot of Phillies fans, and I will say, after that hour and 11-minute rain delay, heading to the 11th inning. There was a majority of Phillies fans that stayed. A lot of the Orioles fans left, but just an insane game. That was one of the loudest stadiums that I've been to. It is right up there with, you know, the NLDS last year, the NLCS last year. Yeah, it was awesome. I guess real quick on just recapping Baltimore series is, you know, that should maybe be the World Series preview. Friday, just gutsy win for the boys. They're tired still from London. They lose 2-3 in Boston. They come out after the hour rain delay and boom, comes through. But then Saturday, not the greatest. Sunday, Wheeler lets up a career high 4 home runs. Core, I guess, was it just an anomaly, you know, with Zach there? Was it, you know, it was a 1:00 start, a really good Baltimore lineup. Santander's ripping the cover off the ball right now. Are we worried? I'm not too worried about Zach. Are you?
No, not at all. I mean, it's just a good team, hot weather, ballpark that plays into offense. We never see Wheeler give up that many home runs. I mean, he's great at avoiding the barrel of the bat, jamming guys, getting weak contact. But it could be a World Series preview. I mean, over in the AL, the two teams who have been I guess the Guardians record wise, but I still don't totally buy that. It's been mostly based around bullpen, and that can change on a whim. But Orioles, Yankees have been just amazing like all season. And you start to think about the Phillies facing one of them in the World Series. That would be one hell of a matchup. That Baltimore team, though, Ricky, I mean, a lot of impressive young talent. They're going to be good for a very long time. I'm not saying anything original there, but it's just when you see them, you only see them once or twice a year. So.
Yeah, I made a statement last night. I mean, Spence brought up a couple of the guys. How about that Gunnar Henderson, man? I mean, it's almost odd that we see somebody on another team that could light up the scoreboard right away. Yep. I mean, and it's kind of funny because nobody complains about him being leadoff hitter, but everybody complains about Schwarber. Schwarber's got a 370 plus on base percentage. So shh, be very, very quiet. And that Gunnar Henderson scares me. Bradish going down may be a little bit of an issue for them.
That's their third pitcher this year.
Yeah, they've had some tough luck pitching wise, but it's happening to everybody. That's funny you just brought up the injuries because it's happening everywhere. I mean, you look the Yankees had the Garrett Cole situation at the beginning of the season. You look over in LA, they may have the toughest because you don't replace Mookie Betts and Yamamoto goes down at the same time. They're going to have a tough little stretch in front of them right now. You had Turner, JT go down for the Phillies. Now you have Michael Harris go down for the Braves. There's a lot of big teams losing a lot of big names right now. And it's going to be interesting to see if some of those teams could hold up without these guys.
Speaking of big names, future Hall of Famers, that had to feel probably pretty good for Craig Kimbrell to shut up some Phillies fans. I mean, he was probably getting a lot of flack, and he looked pretty good in those two games. Thinking about like Game 5 of the World Series, Craig Kimbrell against Bryce Harper in the 9th inning, and just oh my God!
On Friday when they brought him in, they did the light show, right? Everyone was going nuts, including Phillies fans, though. Phillies fans were like, yeah, baby, bring Craig in. Here we go. Dude, I was cracking up.
You stuck it to him pretty good.
And then all of a sudden comes out and that curveball was nasty.
Which is a reminder. I mean, it's a reminder. He was very good for much of the regular season last year. And again, it's just a reminder that like relief performance can change night to night, right? Like
he's a 50 inning guy now.
Yeah.
Nothing over that.
Yeah.
Maybe 45 appearances and that's it.
Interesting. Yeah, he has been used a little bit less. Like usually you'll see teams bring their closer into a 4-run game, but the Orioles don't do that much with him. But yeah, anyway, so we'll see. The Phillies and the Padres, they continue this series. The Padres never seem to be able to beat the Phillies, whether it's here, whether it's there, no matter what incarnation of the team it is. It just seems like there's something in their head because
it's those dummies that were singing.
12-3. I think it's 13-3 now for the win on Monday. 13-3 since the that song came out.
We got to get those guys on the show.
It's horrible.
How does it go?
Not even singable. I don't remember.
Maybe we can get them to do our open for us for rest of the season. So, all right, he's Ricky and Spencer. I am Corey. Enjoy the Phillies Padres series. We'll catch you later in the week.